It all began when my wife moved in with our neighbor to figure out her feelings. She thought I'd just wait, but one unexpected choice I made turned everything upside down. I'm 30 now, and up until recently, I thought I had life all sorted out. I've never been the flashy type, no big dreams of fame, no appetite for chaos. Just a regular guy living a simple, steady life. I work as a software developer. Got a stable gig, a decent little house tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. And until not too long ago, I truly believed I had a solid marriage with a woman I deeply cared about. Chloe and I met around 8 years ago, though it feels like a whole different lifetime. I was 20 back then, fresh out of college, trying to find my footing at my first job and, if I'm being honest, pretty clueless about the world. Chloe was 19 when we met, working as an assistant at a marketing firm, still figuring out what she wanted to do with her career. Truth be told, she never really did find that path. She eventually settled into life as a stay-at-home wife. We first crossed paths at a friend's backyard barbecue, one of those laid-back get-togethers with paper plates, cheap beer, and someone inevitably burning the burgers. She made the first move, actually walked up and made a smart-ass comment about how I looked like I was planning my escape route. I can't even remember what I said back, but it made her laugh, and just like that, we spent the whole evening talking. Things picked up speed from there. We started seeing each other pretty regularly, and she brought this spark into my life that I didn't even know was missing. Chloe was spontaneous, full of energy. She'd come up with these last-minute road trip ideas or drag me out to some quirky little restaurant she'd read about online. I was the grounded one, the guy making sure the bills were paid, checking the weather forecast, and topping off the gas tank before we hit the road. It seemed like we made a good team. Her wild side balanced out my practicality. She brought fun and adventure into our world, and I gave her the kind of stability she told me she'd never had in past relationships. 3 years into dating, we got married. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small ceremony with our families and a few close friends. Neither of us came from money, so there wasn't any big reception or overpriced catering, but we didn't care. It felt right. After the wedding, we started building a life together. We bought a modest 2-bedroom place in the suburbs. Nothing flashy, but it had charm and potential. Life felt steady. I'd head to work, come home, and Chloe would usually be in the kitchen or relaxing on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She'd fill me in on her day. There was always some drama at her marketing job, usually involving her coworkers or a picky client. I'd listen, and that was kind of our rhythm. She did most of the talking, and I was more of the quiet, listening type. We didn't have kids, and that was something we both agreed on early. Neither of us was in a rush. We figured we'd wait until we felt more financially secure, more ready to take that leap. Honestly, it felt like we were on the same page about almost everything. But looking back, I think I might have gotten too comfortable. It's easy to slip into routines when life feels stable. I'd wake up, go to work, come home, rinse and repeat. We still had date nights, usually dinner at one of our go-to places or a movie, but I started overlooking the little things. Like how much Chloe craved attention. In the beginning, it seemed harmless. She had this energy that drew people in. She could walk into a room and instantly be the center of attention. And I guess I just assumed that would always be part of our life together, like it was baked into the deal. I stopped thinking much about it. I thought we were rock solid. Sure, we argued now and then, what couple doesn't? Most of it was minor stuff, like me forgetting to take the trash out or her leaving shoes in every room. Nothing serious. But here's the thing about relationships, they can look fine on the surface even while cracks are quietly forming underneath. And if you're not paying attention, those cracks can spread until the whole thing's barely holding together. I didn't see it happening. Not then. I thought we were building something strong, something that would last. But life has a funny way of flipping your assumptions on their head. About 2 years ago, someone new moved into the neighborhood, Tyler. He bought the house next door after the older couple who lived there packed up and moved down to Florida. Tyler was around 27 at the time, younger than most of the folks on our street. He worked as a personal trainer, fit, confident, and honestly, too handsome for his own good. He looked like one of those guys from a superhero movie, built like a tank, always tanned, and somehow always managing to be shirtless. From the moment he moved in, you couldn't miss him. He was always outside, washing his car, mowing the lawn, setting up exercise gear in the yard. There was always something. Naturally, he became the talk of the neighborhood pretty quickly. Chloe noticed him right away. I mean, how could she not? The first time we officially met Tyler was one Saturday morning while we were out in the yard. He walked over to introduce himself. Friendly guy, smooth talker, the kind of charm that puts people at ease. Chloe jumped right into conversation with him, asking where he was from, what he did for work, how he was liking the neighborhood. I just stood there, smiling and nodding, while the two of them chatted like they'd known each other for years. I didn't think much of it at the time. Chloe was naturally friendly. She talked to everyone. She could strike up a conversation with the barista or the mailman just as easily. I didn't see anything unusual in how she interacted with Tyler. But looking back now, I can spot the subtle changes that started happening not long after that day. It started with quick, harmless chats. Whenever Tyler was outside, Chloe always seemed to find a reason to be out there too. At first it was little things, grabbing the mail, watering the plants, taking out the trash. But those 5-minute errands started stretching into longer conversations, 10, 15 minutes at a time. I remember one particular evening. I came home from work and saw the two of them standing in the driveway. Chloe had a laundry basket in her hands, on her way to the garage, and Tyler was leaning casually against his car, laughing at something she'd said. When I walked up, they both looked at me like nothing was out of the ordinary. Chloe smiled like it was no big deal. "She was just telling me about his new gym equipment," Chloe said, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. But that wasn't where it stopped. A couple of weeks later, out of nowhere, Chloe decided to bake cookies, something she hadn't done in ages. At first, I didn't think twice. Not until I looked out the window and saw her walking across the lawn with a plate of them in her hands. "Just being neighborly," she said with a smile when I asked her about it. And honestly, I didn't question it. Chloe had always been the type to drop off a batch of brownies or banana bread with the neighbors, so I chalked it up to her usual friendliness. But then came something different, something that didn't sit quite right. She went out and bought a new set of workout clothes. Bright, tight-fitting leggings and a matching top, not really her usual style. When I asked about it, she casually said she was thinking of taking up jogging again. "Just want to get back in shape," she added, like it was no big deal. And that would have made sense. She'd had these workout kicks before where she'd get all hyped for a couple of weeks and then stop. But the timing? That's what caught my attention. See, Tyler ran nearly every morning. I'd see him out there like clockwork, headphones in, looping the block, working up a sweat. And wouldn't you know it, Chloe suddenly decided that her new jogging routine would start right around the same time. One morning, as I was heading to work, I saw them out there. She was stretching, and Tyler was crouched beside her, showing her some method to avoid shin splints. I didn't say much, just gave them a wave and drove off, but something about that moment stuck with me. It wasn't anything obvious, but it lingered. Around that time, I started noticing a shift in how Chloe handled her phone. Now, she'd always been glued to it, social media, texting, sending memes to her friends. But suddenly, it felt different. She started getting cagey. There were a few moments where I'd walk into the room and she'd quickly lock her screen or flip the phone face down, like she didn't want me to catch a glimpse. One night, she was scrolling through Instagram while we sat on the couch. I happened to glance over and saw Tyler's name right there at the top of the screen. She swiped past it quick, like maybe I wouldn't notice, but I did. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off without missing a beat. "Just looking at his fitness posts," she said. "He's got some solid workout tips." And even though a little voice in my head was raising questions, I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I let it go. But it didn't stop there. Little things started adding up. One afternoon, I was working in the garage and heard laughter floating in from the backyard. I stepped outside and saw the two of them standing by the fence. Chloe was holding a glass of iced tea, and Tyler was mid-story, hands moving like he was acting something out. Whatever it was, they were both laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. When I brought it up later, she just shrugged and said, "Tyler was telling me about something funny that happened at his gym." Said it like it was nothing. But to me, it was starting to feel off. Now, I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions. I don't want to sound like some jealous husband watching his wife like a hawk, but you can tell when the vibe changes. There was something different in the way Chloe mentioned Tyler lately. She'd casually drop his name in conversation, stuff like, "Tyler's thinking of adopting a dog," or "Tyler recommended this new protein shake." And it wasn't just what she was saying. It was the way she said it, like she was smiling on the inside whenever he came up. Then there were the looks. You know the kind I'm talking about. The quick glances when someone thinks you're not paying attention. We'd be out front, and if Tyler happened to be in his yard, I'd catch Chloe looking his way just for a second, but enough to notice. At that point, I hadn't said anything. I didn't want to accuse her of something I couldn't prove. I kept telling myself I was just overthinking it, being paranoid. I still trusted her. We'd been through a lot together. I believed in us. But deep down, something wasn't sitting right. So I decided to watch a little closer. I wasn't trying to catch her in the act or anything, I just needed to know for sure what I was dealing with. And that brings me to one particular Saturday morning. I remember it clearly, mostly because of how normal it started out. I got up early like I usually do, made myself some coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table to scroll through the news. Chloe was still asleep, which didn't surprise me. She liked to take her time getting up on weekends. The house was quiet, just the low hum of the coffee maker in the background. For a moment, it felt peaceful. Almost like everything was okay. Funny how that works, sometimes the calmest mornings come right before the storm. About an hour later, Chloe came shuffling into the kitchen. She was still in her pajamas, hair a mess, phone in one hand while she rubbed her eyes with the other. She plopped down across from me, and right away I could tell something was off. She had this jittery energy like she couldn't sit still. Kept tapping her fingers on the table, glancing down at her phone every few seconds. "You all right?" I asked, setting my own phone aside. She nodded at first, then shook her head. "Actually, no," she said, sighing like the weight of the words was heavy. "We need to talk. And if you've ever been in a long-term relationship, you know what that means. We need to talk never leads to anything good." My chest tightened, but I stayed calm. "All right," I said, leaning back in my chair. "What's going on?" Chloe hesitated. Her eyes darted around the room like she was looking for an exit or maybe just trying to find the right words. Finally, she looked me in the eye and said, "I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it." I braced myself. "I think I have feelings for Tyler." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. I leaned forward, trying to make sense of what she just said. "What?" She bit her lip and looked down at her lap. "I didn't plan for it to happen," she said quickly, like she was trying to soften the blow before it hit. "It just happened. We've been spending time together and there's this connection, and now I'm confused." Confused. That was the word that hit the hardest. She wasn't saying she made a mistake or that she felt bad about it. She was saying she didn't know what she wanted. Like she was stuck in some emotional limbo and didn't know which direction to go. I stared at her, my mind racing a mile a minute. Was she saying she wanted out? Was she just trying to be honest and move past it? Or was this the start of something unraveling? I asked her straight up, "So, what does this mean? Are you saying we're done?" Chloe shook her head quickly. "No, not necessarily. I don't know what I want right now." The lawyer laid everything out for me, what to expect, what steps I'd need to take, the whole process. It wasn't exactly comforting, but by the time I walked out of his office, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while, relief. Like I was finally steering my own ship again. Back at the house, I started making small moves just to get ahead of whatever might come next. I shifted some money into a separate account just in case things got ugly. Quiet preparations, nothing dramatic. I found myself walking from room to room, mentally sorting out what was mine and what she'd probably take. I didn't touch any of her things yet, figured I'd wait until we were officially done. But in my head, I was already rearranging the place, imagining it without her in it. Days turned into weeks, and the silence that filled the house started to feel manageable. Peaceful, even. I wasn't listening to Chloe's constant running commentary or dealing with bickering over whose turn it was to load the dishwasher. It was quiet, and I didn't hate it. Then I started hearing whispers from the neighborhood. One person mentioned seeing Chloe and Tyler at the park, said they looked pretty cozy. Another neighbor mentioned spotting them at some cafe downtown. I nodded, played it cool, pretended like I didn't care. But inside, I was split between two feelings. Part of me was mad, furious that she'd tossed aside everything we'd built for some guy with a six-pack and a pull-up bar. And the other part? I just felt sorry for her. Because I knew how this would play out. Tyler didn't strike me as the commitment type. He was a good time, not a long-term plan. And Chloe was going to figure that out eventually and painfully. By week 3, I'd stopped checking my phone to see if she'd texted. If she wanted to talk, she knew where to find me. But I wasn't sitting around waiting anymore. I was done with that. One evening, while I was cleaning out the garage, I stumbled across an old box of photos from when Chloe and I first started dating. Flipping through those pictures hit me with a wave of nostalgia, a sharp reminder of how happy we used to be. But right behind that came the memory of all the little red flags I'd brushed aside over the years. All the times I'd quietly prioritized her needs and pushed mine into the background. I closed the box and shoved it aside. I didn't need those memories anymore. Then, almost exactly a month to the day she left, Chloe decided to stroll back into my life. I hadn't heard much from her while she was off with Tyler. Just a few half-hearted texts, hope you're doing okay, or we'll talk when I'm back. No real effort. No updates. It felt like she'd mentally moved on and left me as her backup plan. But by then, I'd stopped caring. I wasn't sitting by the window hoping she'd come to her senses. I wasn't pacing the floor wondering what she and Tyler were doing. I'd already filed for divorce. My lawyer had the paperwork in motion. As far as I was concerned, this marriage was already over. But I hadn't said that out loud, not yet. When she finally came through the front door, she looked like someone coming back from a weekend getaway, not a woman who had just left her husband to explore her feelings with the guy next door. Hair done, confident smile, overnight bag slung over her shoulder. Hey, she said, dropping her bag by the door. I'm back. I was on the couch, flipping through channels, and barely glanced up. Welcome back, I said, keeping my voice flat. She paused, probably waiting for me to ask how she was or how things had gone. When I didn't, she walked over and perched on the arm of the couch. We should talk, she said, soft and cautious. I muted the TV and looked over at her. All right, I said, folding my arms. Let's talk. She gave me that smile, the one she used when she was trying to smooth over tension. I've done a lot of thinking, she began, and I've come to some realizations. About us. About me. About what I really want. I nodded, staying quiet. She took a breath like she was gearing up for some big emotional speech. I care about you, Ethan. I really do. And I believe we can get past this. We can rebuild what we had. Rebuild. Like this was some leaky pipe under the sink and all it needed was a wrench and a little effort. I didn't say a word. Just kept my eyes on her, letting the silence stretch. She looked thrown by my lack of reaction but pressed on. Tyler's a great guy, she said, and I had to physically stop myself from laughing at how casually she brought him up. But I've realized he's not what I need. He's fun, yeah, but he's immature. He doesn't have what you have. You're stable, grounded. I think I just got caught up in something new and exciting. That was her grand epiphany. Tyler was a shiny toy and now she wanted the old reliable one back. I said quietly, keeping my voice level. She blinked, clearly expecting more. I know I hurt you, she added, reaching out to touch my arm. But I really believe we can move past this. We've been through so much, Ethan. We've got history. That's not something you just throw away. I let her finish. Let her spill all her sweet-sounding words about second chances and forgiveness. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out a stack of papers. Set them down on the table right in front of her. She looked at them, confused. What's this? Divorce papers, I said. Her smile cracked. You're kidding. Nope, I said, leaning back against the counter, arms crossed. Not kidding. She stared at the paperwork, her face draining of color. Then she looked up at me wide-eyed. You're divorcing me? Yeah, I said simply. I'm not interested in being someone's second choice, Chloe. Her face twisted, shock giving way to anger. Second choice, she snapped. That's not what this is. You left, I said, keeping my tone even. You walked away from our marriage to try things out with someone else. And now that it didn't pan out, you think you can just pick back up where we left off. I was confused, Ethan, she said, her voice shaking. I needed time to figure things out. And during that time, I replied, still calm, you chose to test the waters with another guy. You made your choice. And now I'm making mine. She looked like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Her face was turning red. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I didn't want to stay and resent you, she finally said. You thought you could have it both ways, I finished for her. She stood up, folding her arms. You're making a mistake, Ethan. We can fix this. I know we can. I looked her right in the eye. No, I said, my voice steady. We can't. You made your decision, and now I'm making mine. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but I didn't let that shake me. I'd already made peace with my choice. The rest of the conversation honestly blurred together. She tried everything, pulling at our history, bringing up the house, even tossing out the idea of starting a family someday, like that would change my mind. But it didn't. Eventually, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a second, staring at the empty space where she'd just been, and felt absolutely nothing. No sadness, no guilt, not even a flicker of doubt. Just a deep, quiet relief. That night, I called my lawyer to give him the update. She saw the papers, I said. How'd it go? He asked. Not great for her, I said with a smirk. You want to give her time, or push forward? Let's keep it moving, I replied without even thinking about it. It hadn't been easy standing up to Chloe like that, but damn, it felt good to finally draw a line. She treated me like a backup plan, something safe to fall back on when the exciting part of her adventure didn't work out. If she thought I was just going to take that lying down, she clearly didn't know me as well as she thought she did. And I knew Chloe. She wasn't the type to let go without a fight, especially not when she realized she was losing. I hadn't even finished my coffee when my phone buzzed with a message from her. This isn't over. I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked my phone and tossed it onto the couch. She was right about one thing, it wasn't over yet. But it would be. Soon. The next couple of days were anything but quiet. The very next evening, Chloe showed up unannounced, hammering on the front door like she was trying to knock it off the hinges. Ethan. Open the door. I opened it, keeping my face unreadable. What do you want, Chloe? She didn't even wait for an invitation, just shoved past me and marched into the living room like nothing had changed. We need to talk, she said, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. You can't just file for divorce without giving me a chance to fix things. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You had a chance, I said quietly. You made your choice when you left. That's not fair, she snapped, her voice climbing. I didn't leave to end our marriage, I left to make sure I wasn't making a mistake by staying. I let out a bitter laugh. And in doing that, you made it pretty clear how little you valued what we had. You don't test a marriage by running off to someone else, Chloe. That's not how this works. She froze mid-step and turned to face me, her eyes red and glassy. I was confused, she said, her voice shaky. I didn't know what I wanted, but I do now. I want us, Ethan. I want to fix this. I shook my head slowly. It's too late. You're just mad because it didn't work out with Tyler, I added. Now you want to come back to what's familiar. What's safe? Her expression darkened and she jabbed a finger toward me. You're being petty, she said, her voice sharp. You're throwing everything away over one mistake. I didn't flinch. This wasn't just one mistake, Chloe. It was a whole chain of choices. You flirted with him. You fed that connection. You let it grow and then you walked out. Nobody forced you to do any of that. You chose it. She looked like she wanted to fire back, say something, anything, but no words came. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time in a long time she looked defeated. So what am I supposed to do now? She asked softly, like the weight of everything was finally hitting her. I let out a breath and, for a second, felt a flicker of pity. Even after everything, part of me still hated seeing her like that. But I didn't let it cloud my judgment. That's not my problem anymore, I said quietly. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. She stood there for a moment like she still had something to say, like maybe one last Hail Mary would fix it. But nothing came out. Eventually, she just turned and walked out the door, leaving behind whatever hope she'd been holding on to. After that, the divorce moved fast. At first, Chloe did everything she could to slow it down. I think she thought I'd change my mind if she dragged things out long enough. She even started painting herself as the victim to our mutual friends, saying I was being cold, unforgiving, like I hadn't given her a chance. But my dad? He didn't buy any of it. When I told him what was going on, he just let out a long whistle and shook his head. She's got some nerve, he said. But I'm proud of you, son. Standing your ground like this, it's not easy, but it's right. And that stuck with me. Because for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was actually doing the right thing for me. Chloe's delayed tactics didn't get her far. My lawyer was sharp, and the fact that she'd left our marriage to shack up with the neighbor kind of spoke for itself. We had the text records. The timeline. It was all there. She tried going after spousal support, saying she'd sacrificed her career for the sake of our marriage. But the judge didn't buy that narrative, not when she was the one who walked out. In the end, we reached a fair settlement. She walked away with a small payout and a few pieces of furniture she'd picked out over the years. I got to keep the house and most of my savings. Was it perfect? No. But it was a hell of a lot better than I'd expected. The final hearing was a strange one. Bittersweet, I guess. Sitting there in that courtroom, signing papers that would officially close the book on 8 years of history, it didn't feel real. I looked over at Chloe a couple of times. She looked worn out, like she hadn't had a decent night's sleep in days. When her lawyer handed her the pen, she just sat there for a second, frozen. I almost thought she wouldn't go through with it. But she did. She signed, and just like that, it was done. Outside the courtroom, she caught up with me in the hallway. Ethan, she said, barely loud enough to hear. I'm sorry for everything. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find that girl I fell in love with. But I couldn't. All I saw was someone I used to know. I know you are, I said quietly. But sorry doesn't fix this. Her eyes started to fill, and she reached out like maybe she wanted to hug me or grab my hand or something. I stepped back before she could. Take care of yourself, Chloe, I said, and then I walked away. Now and then, I'd still hear bits and pieces about her through friends. Word was, Tyler moved on pretty quickly after she tried to come back. Didn't even last a month. She ended up staying with a relative, figuring things out, as someone put it. I didn't feel happy about that. I didn't feel bad either. Just nothing. She'd made her choices. Now she had to live with them. One day, I ran into her at the grocery store. We locked eyes for a split second, long enough for me to see the guilt written all over her face. She gave a small, awkward wave like she didn't know what else to do. I just nodded and kept walking. There was nothing left to say. Looking back now, I don't regret how I handled any of it. Chloe thought she could walk out, explore her feelings with someone else, and just waltz back into my life when things didn't go her way. But life doesn't work like that. This whole thing taught me a lot about relationships, about boundaries, and about myself. I've realized I deserve more than someone who keeps me around as a backup plan. I want someone who chooses me fully and without hesitation. And if that person's out there, great. If not, that's fine too. Right now, I'm just focused on rebuilding my life on my own terms. Chloe thought her time with Tyler would give her clarity. Maybe it did. But for me, it was the wake-up call I didn't even know I needed.